saying? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm back. Fred White, Tales from the Pen. And I told you guys I'm going to be coming with some interviews. And today I got a very, very special guest, a very, very good friend of mine. You know, we was up in the mountains together. Very good individual, very good brother, man. And I'm glad that he's here, and I'm glad to be able to call him my brother. Why don't you introduce yourself to the people, man?
My name is Lawrence Bartley, Director of News Inside for the Marshall Project.
There it is, the Marshall Project. So as I said, me and Lawrence was upstate together, and we did a little time together up in Clinton Correctional Facility. And Lawrence, why don't you let them know a little bit about yourself and what led you to the penitentiary in the first place?
Well, unfortunately, my story is not unique. I come from Queens. I live in Queens. When I was 16 years old, well, I was 14, in fact, my parents got divorced, and I moved from a middle-class neighborhood to an urban neighborhood. And the things that I was used to in my middle-class neighborhood wasn't the norm in my urban neighborhood. I saw, crack vials on the floor, people were into drugs. A lot of crimes were occurring in my new neighborhood, but there were also working people there who were trying to get by. But for my junior high school years, I had become popular. I played football. I was active in school programs, and so I was popular in that way. But when I got to high school, the norm was a little different. As I mentioned before, people were into selling drugs. Crack epidemic started to hit my community hard, and people wasn't using it; they were selling it. So in order to become popular, I began to hang with the crowd that was into the wayward thinking and negativity that was common in that era. And it led me to being shot 4 times when I was 16 years old. And after being shot, my life changed. For many people, when they experience trauma like that, they either turn around and live on the straight and narrow, or they just go all in. And I began to fear that someone would shoot me every time I walked down the street. So I just picked up a gun in order to protect myself. I had no intentions of using that gun, but it was my security and made me feel whole.
Never leave home without it. I get it.
Yeah, and and the option of going to the police wasn't an option for me, because I know the police from riding their vans on the sidewalk, chasing us down and trying to harm us, for no reason when we were kids. So there weren't anyone I would kind of rely on. But to make a short story shorter, I had the gun with me one night. I went to a movie theater, and I started hanging out with friends who carry guns themselves. And another group of teens into the movie theater making noise and yelling. And one of my friends told that group of teens to calm down, to cool it down. We're trying to watch the film. But I guess they didn't like that. So they got up, and it was about 8 to 10 of them. They stood before the seats where we were sitting, and one of them pulled out a gun and fired. And my group returned fire. I shot once. I didn't see anyone in front of me. I don't know if I even hit anyone, but later on, I was arrested and convicted and sentenced to 27 and 30 years to life. And I did every bit of that. And I was released in 2018.
From almost 28 years, 27 and some change. Because that happened in December, if I'm not mistaken. Of
Yes.
90, right? Godfather 3, Sunrise Highway. It was very, very famous case here in New York, So, I remember it well. And sometimes even when I see Godfather thing, for some reason, as bad as it sounds, I think of you. Yeah. And I think it is. I know. And I think of, what you went through. And I mean, you're my boy. I'm just keeping it funky with you, And but to do 27 years, man, I mean, how was it when you after 27 years of prison, right? How was it when you got released? Like how with like when you first took them first steps out from 27 years behind the wall, when the suffering and the wars that you've seen and been through, you know, how was it, man? To, you know, let us know, how was it when you first walked out and seen the real world, man?
Oh, well, before I say that, I
Yeah.
would be remiss if I didn't say that there was someone who lost their life on the end of that. So
Right.
I don't want to make it seem like, like I was the victim here. I was I was 17 years old and sent to a maximum security prison. So to some degree, I was taking it, but someone lost their life, and I'm really cognizant of that. And I don't want to undervalue the pain and suffering that family went through. But to answer your question, when I got out, man, it was like many people say it's like breathing different air. Free air feels different, and in fact, that euphoria I felt from being born again by being released, it still persists to this day. It's been almost 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
and every day I count my blessings. I don't. It's very rarely I complain about something. Sure, there's hardships in life, but I've been through so many traumatic experiences over my 27 years on so many different levels. We worked on the Zoe together,
Yeah.
and we talked about how people could just not wake up in time for the count at 5:30 in the morning and miss a list, and because of that, you burnt from going to program on that day, and because of that, you could get a misbehavior report written against you that can follow you for 20 something years when you finally go to the parole board and try to make your case for your freedom, and that can cause you to stay in prison longer. So
Right.
that's one of the subtle ways that incarceration can be traumatic. Then there's what people hear of the violence.
It says, yeah, you know, you mentioned the count and things like that, and let people know what the count is in the first place. What is the count?
Well, the count is like when you're incarcerated, the guards and the facility, they want to count every person multiple times a day to make sure they're still there. So in some instances, a standing count, a person has to stand up in the cell while officer walk by and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then they gonna make their list inside of their office and they send it to the watch commander in each facility. And that watch commander matches the list from every cell block in that facility, and they have a count for that facility. But then they send it to a central office in Albany, who has the master count for each facility, and to make sure all those numbers match.
Right.
Those numbers don't match, they out with the dogs looking for somebody.
Yeah, that's that escape thing, you know, like the escape from Clinton. Them two guys escaped from up there, you know. We were there. We weren't there when it happened, you know what I mean? But
yeah,
we were there, so we know we know exactly the routes they took.
Exactly.
You know, so I want to give people a little bit insight. So me and John met. We met in Clinton. And actually, I was in the box with somebody who was very close to him. And he used to tell me all the time, yo, you know, if you go to Clinton, you know, make sure you get with my man, Jai. You know, Darius used to tell me that all the time. You know, he was my bunkie in the box. So he used to tell me, you know, Jai. And, you know, I'm not the type to go to a jail and be like, who's Jai? That's just not what I did. It just so happened that we were both in upper F. I was in 9-10 cell, and you in upper F7, like what, 13. You were like, right, you remember your,
I was in 713.
you was in upper F713. I was in upper F910. So what that means, people, is we had the sides were 5, upper F5, 7, and 9 was on one side, and the other side had, you know, the even numbers. So we were able to communicate back and forth.
A little more, like the numbers he's calling out, they're galleries, so long hallways.
Right.
There's like a long hallway number 5, long hallway number 7, long hallway number 9.
Right.
And the hallway that he was on top of mine.
Right.
And he was and you said you was in 10 cell?
I was in upper F910. I never forget.
10, they matched like 9-10, and then the other gallery, I was in 713. So he was like a 3 cells ahead of me upstairs. Yeah. So we can hear each other talk.
We can hear each other, and I always used to hear people, yo, Jai, yo, Jai, yo, Jai. Jai was very famous behind the wall. Right. So, and he also was the commissioner of the basketball league.
That's right.
Right. So that's how me and Jai got cool. And I was from Queens, he was from Queens. And then what happened was one time we had the sides thing. I want to tell that story too. we had the sides where the thing is that you never get to see, Clinton is so big that the upper Fs and the lower Fs, they never really see each other, right? They only see each other here and there. And what happened was, Ja was the commissioner, and he said, I'll let you tell it, Ja. Tell the stories.
Oh gosh. Well, I think you're referring to the time when in Clinton, they're like you said, there's two sides, which means half the side of the prison goes to yard and able to communicate with each other, and then the other half goes to yard separately and able to communicate with each other. But they're under one prison, so one side don't necessarily see the other side, because recreation is the only time where you can socialize, other than in programs, but that's very limited. But because of a series of supreme violent altercations, each side wasn't able to play sports against each other. They used to call them crossover. You cross over to one side, one team to play another side. So you weren't able to do that because they was afraid that violence was going to erupt. But when I became the commissioner, you know, I convinced the rec department, who then convinced the administration to allow us to have a crossover where one side's basketball team plays the other side. And so I amassed, being that it was one of the first time a crossover is done in a long time, we wanted to make this a big deal. So we wanted to get the best player from one side and the best players from the other side, and create two super teams and have them play each other like an all-star game. So I did it with the side I was on, and Fred was the point guard on the. So I brought them over. We came over into the yard, and it was like silence. Everybody was looking at us like, gosh, from the other side coming over. And like, wow, this doesn't happen. Those basketball team, let's see what they do. So everybody, you feel electricity in the air. So we walked all the way up the hills, a long walk. So everyone gets to see us walk up there. Then we get there to play, you know, it's super crowded. We like in enemy territory. It's like super crowded. And I remember when they started playing ball, you know, we started coming to the court, they got the ball, everybody doing a layup line, they get ready to start playing. And one guy is gonna say, in a derogatory fashion, yo, who is this white boy with the ball? So I was like, whoa, I was like, man, that's disrespectful to start the game. And then, you know, I remember Fred had the ball, he takes it over half court, the timeline, and stops dribbling. He looks at me, used me as a soundboard to the guy. He said, is he calling me a white boy? They said, who, the white boy? Okay. Skirt, 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 layup. They go down the other way still, skirt, jump shot. We said, I guess I'm the white boy, huh? That's who the white boy is.
I bet they know me now, motherfucker.
I bet they know him now.
Nah, man. You know,
Yes.
we're not trying to glorify what, you know, a lot of things, but, you know, sometimes, you know, when you're in that kind of environment, you have to find some balance amongst the negativity, you know what I mean? And that was some of the positive times and some of the positive, you know, funnier times that I remember, you know what I mean? You can't do all that time and just be bitter, you know. That's the thing about penitentiary that a lot of people don't understand. Like, you meet people in there that you're going to be friends with for life, like forever, no matter what, because, you know, there's a bond there and the people just can't understand, you know what I mean? So it wasn't all just, you know, blood and gore. It was some bonding and some good friendships being built too, you know what I mean? And then me and Ja also, we also we won that game too, by the way. But Ja was so efficient. Ja used to have a book, I swear on everything I love. Ja used to have a book on every player in the jail. Ja had a scouting report on them, their weaknesses, their strengths. I used to be like, oh my, who was they compared to? What player? Like, I never forget. You had me as Grant Hill / Jason Kidd, and I'm just, when you showed, because I didn't believe you. When you showed me the book, I was like, this dude is detailed. Yeah, this dude is detailed. Hey, what's going on back there, buddy? All right, I see you. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
All righty, that's what I like to hear. The laws are in the building. So we also had a program. We also had a program called, in every state prison, it's called ART program. And Ja was the coordinator and was like, yo, you want to come work with me? And then me and Ja started teaching the class, you know, and And the thing is that ART is aggression replacement training or anger replacement. It's different jails have different things, but if when we used to have to do skits, put people in scenarios, that didn't result in violence, and that's the class that we had to take. And a lot of people ask me all the time when I talk about it, and they say, why would anybody who has 25 or 50 years want to take a class and have to listen to you, right? So, and I tell them about the family reunion program, or or people knew it as trailer visits. So the thing was that even though you had 25, 30, 40 years, in order for you to get the family reunion program, which is what break down a little bit of the family reunion program, because I know I never actually got one myself. What exactly is the family reunion program?
It's a family reunion program. Is like a euphemism for conjugal visits. That's where families can go in one space for about 48 to 72 hours. They could go in one space where they're not interrupted by guards. It's like they mimic the home, the being free. In New York State, they have like modular homes, or a kitchen, 2 bedrooms, bathroom, a living room. And that's where a person can be human. A person can be there with his children, be there with their father, their mother, their wives, their husbands. They can actually be a family every 90 days for those 48 hours. And you have to be well behaved. You can't have any misbehavior reports. If you have you have a violent crime, you have to pass ART, the program. If you have a drug crime, you have to pass ASAP, in order to qualify to be in there. And you have to stay out of trouble to remain part of the program.
Right. I mean, that was very beneficial for you. You know what I mean? We got 2 little boys out that thing.
Exactly. Definitely.
Yeah, we have 2 little boys, man. And and I seen a video that you did about the power of your voice, man. And I found that kind of deep. So in kind of a short way, can you break down about maybe your little boys and what you kind of went through behind the wall, that you couldn't really be out there with them, but you were there. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, it was a TED talk we called The Power of a Parent's Voice. My eldest son, he was born very premature. He was called a micropumi. He was 1 pound, 8 ounces. And he fought for his life. For the first 3 months, he fought for his life every hour. During that time, he broke his leg, his lungs collapsed multiple times. And, it was very tough, keeping him alive. And that was one of the most emotionally traumatic experiences of my entire life, of my wife's entire life. And I spent that whole time feeling helpless that I couldn't be there for my boy. But luckily, my wife was there every day, and I would call, and she would put the phone to his ear, and I would say whatever I can to soothe him, to let him know, his dad is here. His dad got him. We want you to be here. I would even speak to the doctors, and they got to know me very well. And it was hours and hours. And people might hear, like, inside of prisons, the phones are valuable. So it's very hard to be on the phone so a long time, because that means other people can't use the phone. And you probably heard many violent altercations that occurred over the phone. But the men saw that I was behaving differently. I'm not the type of person to share my problems, but they could tell I was going through something. And words started getting around amongst them. And they were offer the time on the phone. You want to use the phone? Say things like that. So when I'm on the phone, people walk by, don't get off, don't worry about it. And then, guards will come up and be would say something to me, like somebody must have told them, said, "You're using the phone today, make sure you use the phone, it's okay." And I'm like, okay, well, thank you. So that's one of the times I really appreciate it. A lot of times you hear about the negative experiences in prison. A lot of times you hear negativity about the guards, but guards and both incarcerated people rally around me in the time I needed the most. And I think that played a part in my son being healthy today.
Nice. Nice, man. You know, I love that.
Another one comes in, my younger one comes in.
It's okay. It's all right. That's what they do, man. You know, I got babies of my own. So one of them was screaming a little while ago. It's what it is. You know, it's what they do, man. Nah, I love that story, man, and the power of a parent's voice, man. And you know, I love when you talk about that. And you know, and I'm glad he's good now, boy. He's not little anymore. You know, he's healthy. That's good, man. I'm very happy and very proud of you, man. So, okay, so now let's get into a little bit about what you know what you're doing, and let's talk about the Marshall Project a little bit. And once you let everybody know what actually is the Marshall Project.
Well, the Marshall Project is a nonpartisan, nonprofit news organization that covers criminal justice, and we've only been around for 5 years, but Marshall Project is the youngest organization to ever win a Pulitzer Prize and win multiple awards. We like get into weeds on different topics. We're not a fast turnaround news organization for the most part. All our stories are what's called deep dives. We really get into the system, the nooks and crannies, and report the unique stories that people aren't reporting on. And when I was released, I was fortunate enough to be called to the Marshall Project to do what's called a brown bag, in which I explain my experience on parole, because they bring experts in to talk about particular topics to kind of build out the knowledge of each of his staff members. And I happened to be the expert that day. And the reason why they thought I was an expert is because before I got out, I wrote a piece about my ordeal with parole and the trials and tribulation I went to trying to get to my family. And after I had turned myself around for over 20 years, I wasn't the person that committed the crime that got me there in the first place. But yeah, and still I had to prove myself to the parole board over and over again, 5 times in 7 months actually. But
Okay.
right. But
I went to 4 myself. 2
oh
years,
wow.
2 years, 2 years, 2 years.
Yeah, see, it's crazy. But that piece was published by the Marshall Project. Then they called me in their offices to do the brown bag talk, and they offered me a job, and I began working with the Marshall Project. And while there, I noticed that. By the way, this is one of the first times I ever saw the internet. You know, after being, I was incarcerated when internet was created. So
Right.
actually viewing the internet, like I didn't view it at the Marshall Project for the first time, but slightly before. But while at the Marshall Project, times I really had the opportunity to dig deep in it and click around and navigate. And I saw that the stories that we produce are super relevant to incarcerated lives. But people who are incarcerated don't have access to the internet, therefore they can't see it. And in fact, reading material is screened very tightly from the outside coming in, because they don't want anything that can promote contraband or can promote mental contraband, incite riots, so to speak. So seeing this, I pitched to the Marshall Project and said they allow me to curate their work and place it into print form and distribute it around the country. I promised them I would get them in over 20 facilities in 10 states within a year's time. But in less than a year's time, I got them in over 500 facilities in 38 states. And
that's my boy right there. That's that detail. That's that detail work I'm talking about. You know what I mean? You detailed in everything. You was detailed in scouting reports, and you detailed in there, and it helped you in life, man. Right. So you got him in all these. You got him in all these prisons all over the place.
Absolutely, it's in all these prisons all over the place, and I'm really looking forward to building it out more. And I'm really focused with other things that I'm doing with the Marshall Project. You know,
what did you say the name was again? The publication?
News Inside.
News Inside. Right. So what other things you working on? What are the things you working on for the Marshall Project?
Well, I found that 60% of the incarcerated population is illiterate. So that means only 40% potentially are reading News Inside and absorbing the information. I know from being incarcerated that people who don't speak English, but they have other people read to them. I myself read letters to Spanish speaking brothers that came from their family members, or even read letters from people who can't read at all because academically they weren't learned in
right.
that way. So, So my next project is a project called Inside Story that I just shot a pilot for. It's a video version of the news that's being distributed in prisons and jails across the country.
Nice. That's my boy. I was thinking out the box, boy. That's my boy. Now I'm very proud of you, man. You know that. You already know I'm very proud of you, man. I want to go back though when you were saying about how new things and with the internet was new, because I remember when you first came home, it was like, I don't know how long you had been home before one time I came to pick you up in the city. Right? I came to pick you up in Manhattan. You got in my car, and at that time, I only had the Camry, right? I only had the Camry. And I remember looking at your face when we were driving through the city, and you were just like in awe of the skyscrapers. Even though you were born and raised here, you were such in awe of, like, you know, I'm gonna be honest, if I had found a joy in it, because you were like a little kid, man. You're like, you know, even the car was like, Fred, this is like a spaceship. And it was only a Camry at the time, you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Remember? I remember you said, yeah, you know, and you're like, this is a spaceship. And just driving you home and just driving you around, it was an honor to do it, man, because I seen the joy in your face. Like you hadn't done nothing like that in a long time, man. And, you know, it was definitely my honor to do it, man. And I'm glad to see you doing good. And I'm glad to see that, you're making moves, man. The thing is that a lot of people get stereotyped. You know what I mean? Especially people coming home from penitentiary, you're automatically stereotyped in a certain way. And, it's brothers like you that are literally breaking the mold. These brothers like you are literally breaking the mold of what people's mindset are, what people's mindset is. And, for that, salute, man. And, I love you. I want to talk a little bit about, we got the election coming up, I want to talk a little bit about the importance of the vote. Whatever your vote is, it doesn't matter. I'm just saying the importance of the vote, especially in certain communities. Talk to me.
Well, voting is very important. And I want to call on a recent story we did about jail voting. But let me back up a bit. Well, this recent story we did about jail voting found that people who are incarcerated are less apt to vote now and in the future. The communities they come from, they're overexposed to the criminal justice system because people get incarcerated from there so much, and because of that, I found that there are people who develop a certain level of angst towards the authority, towards the system. They feel like the deck is stacked against them. So why should they even vote in the first place? So because of that, that limits the community's political power by them not voting when their rights were restored after incarceration. So I think it's very important for people to vote because it determines how much money a particular community get, but it also determines who is going to be the district attorney, who is going to be the judge in your community. A lot of people complain about going before a judge and not getting a fair shake, or a person who looks like them doesn't look like them. Rather, they get a slap on the wrist, but they get sentenced to exorbitant prison term. And people lose their right to complain if they don't take part in the civic process. So it is very important in so many levels. If you hear that heard something funny on the radio yesterday, a guy said that ballot boxes are being burned. The people who put in their mail-in ballots are being burned. So, but there are people who won't vote. So he said, if people are going through the extreme length to burn ballot boxes, that means that a vote is important. So
exactly. You know what disturbs me? I think that if people really understood, a lot of people don't know their history. A lot of people don't understand that, in certain communities like the African American community, up until 1965, when they signed the Voters' Right Act, right? Lyndon Johnson put that in there, right? And they assigned what was called the Voters' Right, and it was supposed to be equal rights for everybody. But we know that there's always been obstacles in certain communities, especially the African American communities, even after they passed that bill, because there was such things as like the underlining things in those bills was like voting tax. Okay, in other words, you had to pay to vote. So right away, a lot of the lower income areas wasn't willing to do that. They also had what was called a literacy test for you to vote. Like if you weren't literate, you could not vote. These are obstacles that were in the path that's slowly started to go away. But even nowadays, there's still obstacles in people's ways, as far as like, even I believe it's Minnesota are passing things like, if you start a voter registration drive, you can be fined or you can be arrested for that. Like you're trying to organize something. Do you understand? They're always trying to put obstacles in the way. So what I'm saying is, if there was people had a better understanding that people died literally for your right to vote. People died for to try to make this world a better place. And so when people aren't taking advantage of that, sometimes it gets frustrating, you know what I mean? Because I think if people understood more of where it came from and to where it is now, more people would be involved, but you got to dig deep to find certain things that I'm telling you, because it's just not going to be basically right there. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just
and people don't realize the power they have. They think that they're powerless, but if you don't want to try your best in order to change a situation, and you would much rather just give it away, I mean, that's like you denying yourself. You ain't giving yourself a chance to vote, to make change. Whatever's going on in your community that you don't like, you have the power to try to change that by simply casting the ballot. So
that's right. So that's what we're trying to tell you, people. We're trying to tell you, get out there and vote. It's very important. We got the early voting going on. There's lines 4 or 5 hours, which is discouraging people too as well. But November 3rd, we got to get out there. Whoever it is, I don't care who you vote for, but you got to get out there and vote. You got to get out there and put your vote in and have some say. You can have some say if you just do this, man.
Exactly.
Ja, listen to me, man. We're coming up on that end right now. Listen, man, I really appreciate you doing this. We're gonna have to have a part 2 and a part 3 and a part 4. You already know I love you, man, and I can't wait to come out there to that pool. I can't wait. And I want to let everybody here also know real quick before we leave. I got a secret about Ja. He don't want people to know this.
Oh gosh.
But Ja, let me tell you something. First of all, we have the TVs and ourselves in Clinton, right? And every day at 4 o'clock, I used to put it on, and I used to don't go nowhere. And I used to put on Friends, right? And then we would go out. Don't act like you lost now. And I used to put on the show Friends, right?
Are you there?
Yeah, you. He don't want me to let you know. Ja became a Friends fan. We used to go out to the weight pile, and I'd be like, Ja, did you watch Friends today? He'd be like, nah, I didn't watch it. But I did see Joey, and I did see you did watch Friends.
I don't know what you're talking about. You always
I had to blow you up, man. I had to blow you up, man. Listen, man, I love you, man. And the Tales people, they're definitely going to love you, man. And I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you coming by, man. And we got to do another one. And I'm still on you for that podcast. People, write down in the comments what you think about this podcast name. Ready? Ready for this? We got the White Chocolate Podcast. Ooh! Ooh!
Friends, man.
I love you, man, and I appreciate you coming, brother.
All right, love you too, bro.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you, bro. Salute, my man. There it is, people. You heard it right here. You got it right from my man live right here. Fred White, Tales from the Pen. You guys know my motto: experience is the greatest teacher. But somebody else's experience can be just as valuable if you pay attention and listen. And on that note, people, Fred White signing off. Hold on.